The 2025 NCAA March Madness Men's Tournament is back, and this time it is bringing all the feels. The biggest event in college sports is here, with games happening all day long, and you don't want to miss a second of the heart-pumping action. Catch all the clutch shots, big-time plays, upsets, Cinderellas, Blue Bloods, and more. Tune into the NCAA Men's Division I Basketball Championship March 18th through April 7th on TBS, CBS, TNT, True TV, and stream on Max.
You either answer the bell or you don't. Leader Fan Radio Network.
But you know what?
And KFAN. That's KFAN.com. 2 minutes and 42 seconds past the hour, 3 o'clock Central Daylight Time. We welcome you back. It is a Thursday edition of the Bumper to Bumper program on a, kind of chilly. I don't know what's seasonable. Is 42 degrees seasonable for this time of year or a little chilly? Whatever it is, I think it's about 42. And we're just delighted that the tsunami, the latest tsunami, apparently missed the greater Twin Cities area, other than Apple Valley, which continues to try to shovel out of it, plow their way out of receiving somewhere between 12 and 16 inches of snow. Thoughts and prayers to all of Apple Valley. My name is Dan Barreiro. I am joined today again for the second of 3 consecutive days by Brett Blakemore. Brett Blakemore is back with us, and it's a 3-hour tour today. Why would that be? Well, Golden Gopher women's basketball with Guardsy will be on, I think, what we call KFAN Plus, and because of that, we have to kick our NCAA Big Dance coverage over to the Fan. So that's why we will be out 30 minutes earlier than usual, 6 o'clock today on the Fan. That's still, I think, plenty of time for us to discuss a number of very controversial subjects. The Bradshaw and Bryant inbox is open. I guess I should actually mean I'm talking about the KFAN text line. Because now the inbox, I don't think the inbox has a sponsor. Or is it still called the Bradshaw and Bryant inbox as well? Is our inbox sponsored? Very few people email anymore because we've gone too heavy to the text stuff. 64686. You can still write to booth@kfan.com. I can't tell you I get to those emails very often. Maybe some other hosts do. I'm not sure. But it's still there. I see it. And occasionally people do want to get stuff off their chest that way. And if it's therapeutic for you, go right ahead. Meantime, more likely to get through more quickly at 64686, the official Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line, unless you have been blocked. We have one scheduled guest today for now. I'm negotiating with another, although I don't like our chances. But we do have locked and loaded for today. Russo Radio makes his weekly appearance on the program at 4:30 this afternoon. If you have questions for Russo, you can certainly pass them along. We probably will, at some point, I'm sure several points, get to some live listen-ins via About the Big Dance, which, of course, started in a major way earlier today. I think we got 16 games today, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's the way it works each day during the first round. And is it fair to say that we really have not had to this point anything particularly dramatic, right? I mean, I think we've had some interesting results, but nothing that you'd say, oh, my God, did you see that finish? Or did you see that upset? Or whatever the case may be. I don't think that has happened to this point. Common told me that Alabama State, a 16 seed, was giving Auburn, top seed Auburn, some trouble earlier. It's now halftime, and Auburn's lead is up to 10. So that's not insurmountable, but it appears they're creating some distance. That's 41-31. It is worth noting that late first half, a 12 seed McNeese State is up 14 on Clemson, 25-11. Clemson is a 5. Earlier today, Creighton, a 9, easily dominates 8 seed Louisville, 89-75. Purdue had a little bit of trouble with High Point, a 13 seed, but eventually pulled away to win 75-63. your Wisconsin Badgers, pretty authoritative victory.
I look good.
I mean, a little up and down, but I mean, look, that's what happens in this tournament. But ultimately, they end up winning by 19, 85-66. Wisconsin, remember, is a 3. They were playing Montana. And then Houston, another 1 seed, dominates SIUE. Is that Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville? I'm assuming it is, but you could look that up for me. 78-40 was the final score there. So that's what I got thus far. That's where we're at. We'll keep an eye on some other games. VCU BYU, I think, has just begun. That's a 6. VCU is an 11. BYU is a 6. And then there's a number of interesting games coming up later today. Georgia Gonzaga, Wofford Tennessee, Arkansas Kansas, later into the evening, Drake Missouri eventually, Utah State, UCLA, and the list goes on. Richard Pitino's dad, Rick, and the St. John's Red Storm are supposed to play tonight at, I believe, 8:45 Central against there's 2 seed against 15 Omaha. So we'll keep an eye on another Big Ten team. Michigan is scheduled to play later tonight as well. So we're all looking for what we're always looking for. I'll throw this question out, even though it's not going to be. I didn't intend it to be my main point of emphasis. Or did I already ask this question? Is for the people who care about college basketball, are they in the tournament? Are you as into it as you've always been? Does it feel as big? For some reason, to me, it doesn't feel quite as big as it once did. Now, I think for those interested in just the brackets, it's probably as big as it's ever because people live for the brackets. I was here 30 seconds and was told by someone who shall remain nameless, my bracket's busted already. What I wanted to say politely was, I don't care. But that's the bit, right? What do we live for? We live for our brackets being busted. In his case, I think he had Louisville going a long way, and they're already out. But in general, do we feel like it has the bigness it once? Because once upon a time it was, in some ways, I think, really big. And I think it was more a time where you felt like you had more heavyweight franchises and teams that you could count on almost every year. You could argue there's better balance now. Maybe that's better. I don't know. You have a lot of heavyweight coaches who are no longer coaching. Life goes on, and they haven't all been replaced by legends. I don't know. I mean, at this point in college basketball, how many legendary coaches that we would call legendary, are left? Izzo would have to be in that classification, and he's still doing it. In fact, his Michigan State team might go a ways. We'll see. Rick Pitino would have to be considered a legend. He's back in it. Do we call John Calipari a legend? Really good success, I guess. I don't know if I'd call him legendary. How many? Obviously, Coach K is out. Bob Knight, long gone. How many legends do we have? How do you feel about this tournament? As good as ever? Or, it doesn't feel like the Phi Slamma Jamma day. It doesn't feel like the Duke days. I think it's not like we don't still have some royal names, but I don't think. I look at Houston. I mean, Houston has been really good under a coach who once all but hung up on this program because of some questions that he didn't like to answer or didn't want to ask and wanted me to ask at all. And yet I don't know that they're viewed by the average Rube as, oh yeah, Houston. Oh man. To me, it doesn't feel quite as big, and I can't prove it. I've got nothing to, I'm always one of those people that say, well, give me some facts. Give me something that will help, confirm the argument. And in this case, I don't know that I have a bunch of them, other than, as I said, maybe some of the legendary coaches are gone and not yet to be replaced. Maybe they're legendary coaches in making that just haven't been coaching and not are long enough. Hell, I don't even think it's as good when Franz Red Face is out of the game. I've always had a soft spot for Franz Red Face, especially when he got in the tournament, which didn't happen every year, but, he had a minute or two. So let me know how you feel about that via the text line 64686 on this, the first big day, obviously, of the NCAA Big Dance tournament on the men's side. A lot of good texts are already coming in. You answer the bell or you don't. And last night, both our winter sports professional teams had a chance to answer the bell. One did, and one most assuredly did not. I was ready to give the Wolves a little more leeway after their loss to the Colts, the Pacers the other night, simply because I'm thinking, all right, they won 8 in a row. They're not going to win. They're not going to go undefeated the rest of the way. Weirdness is going to happen. They're going to play down a little bit. And I wasn't going to go to DEFCON 1 on the basis of that loss, even if there were aspects of it that were quite troubling, including the fact that the Pacers were sitting, I think it was 4 starters. And then last night happened. And they were playing a much worse team last night, also missing multiple starters. I think the Pelicans are the second worst record in the Western Conference. And we lose again. And then you say, well, no, I tried to give you your mulligan, if that's what you call it. I can't give you 2 mulligans back-to-back in the same week. I thought the biggest problem last night was defense. I thought it was beyond casual. The Pels shot well over 50%. Their big man, Zion, has been hell against us. The guy, if you just judged Zion's NBA career in games against us, you would say he's one of the 5 best players in the National Basketball Association. And by the way, he's got great talent. His problem has been an inability to stay on the court, right? He was dynamic again last night, but there are a lot of other things. It's just like, so that was a really, really bad loss for the club. And I'm not just going to, they didn't shoot well, but for those people who whine constantly that Ant doesn't get any calls, he went to the free throw line 47 times last night. Stop with that nonsense. And we still couldn't take advantage of it because from the floor he was not very good, and a number of other people weren't as well. And now it starts getting funky because even though the schedule has been soft, continues to be soft, through the first 4 games of this 5-game homestand, you're 2-2. And you've got another game with the Pels, I think, tomorrow night, and then you hit the road again, starting with a decent, a Pacers team that can beat anybody and might be healthier by that point. And so that was a troubling return to unseriousness, I guess is the best way to put it, which has been a problem that's plagued this particular edition of this team, especially at home. Meanwhile, your club, all they do, you're one of those people who were mocking and ridiculing our ability to score. And all I know is that last night, we couldn't stop scoring. In fact, there was a point where the opposing coach looked over towards Heinze and said, call off your dogs. Like, let up on us a little bit. I think the final was 4-0. And what time's your apology to Matt Boldy? Boldy scores twice for the first time in like 4 years. And we talked about this just the other day. Boldy was one of those guys you say, you got to do more, young man. We know who's out and we know who you might miss. But you're too good. You're too important. You have to be more of an offensive threat. And he was starting very early, correct, last night?
Yeah, I mean, they exploded for, 3 goals in the first 5 minutes or whatever it ended up being. My apology to Matt. I've never ripped Matt Boldy. I love the way he plays. It's just the team at times struggled to score. I'll put it this way.
No, there's no question. It's true.
Matt Boldy just now, I think last night, passed Kirill Kaprizov for the team leader in goals for this season.
And how many games is Kaprizov? Well, look up during this break. We're going to break. How many games Kaprizov has missed? Because it's a bunch. That is in of itself an indictment of a stat.
Get ready, basketball fans. We're hosting an all-day KFAN tournament watch party at the Rabbit Hole in Minneapolis this Friday. Stop by from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to catch all the action with the Power Trip's Corey Cove. Make sure to score a limited edition Unreal Tournament hat online or on site for unlimited happy hour pricing on food, drinks, and skip the line every night through April 7th. Full details, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
No matter what condition, my condition is
Well, in all honesty, before I get to some outstanding text coming in about big dance evaluation, we do have percolating a hell of an early story on the first day. I mentioned that Clemson was getting walloped by a 12-seed McNeese State, 31-13. Now it's at half. The earlier I gave you the score, I think, with like 5 or 6 minutes to go in the half. It's halftime. So McNeese, a 12-seed, is up 18 on Clemson. And the fascinating subplot there is that the head coach at McNeese State, Will Wade, is under siege because, by all media accounts, he has accepted a job to be the next head coach at North Carolina State. And as a result, guys, including Charles Barkley, just went off on the timing. It's unfair to his players. It's unfair to the team. Now, my understanding is Wade is coaching today. You can double check that if you like, that the decision that if he's taking this job, it's going to be after the tournament. Regardless, there's no sign through the first half that his players are mad at him or are pouting or are wallowing in their devastation. And that was the accusation. I mean, how are the players supposed to hold it together? Maybe they're inspired by it. I don't know, but McNeese is up 18 points at the half over number 5, Clemson. A reminder again, Russo Radio will join at 4:30 today. Lots of texts. Oh, by the way, did you double check for me how many games has Kirill missed
I did.
now for this season?
Kirill has missed. So the Wild have played 69 games. Nice. And Kirill played 37. So he has missed 32 games, and he is tied still for leading the team in goals this season.
There cannot be a greater indictment about this team's offense. You're exactly right. And it also, though, is a reminder of that's almost half the season.
Yeah.
That's a lot of games. And there's no sign when this is going to end, right? We have no indication how close.
No timeline.
He might be, and still no timeline, apparently. Where were we? There aren't many teams that have multiple future NBA players on it. Plus, with so many players moving around so much in the transfer portal, you don't get much cohesiveness from year to year with top teams, unlike days of the great Duke, UNLV, or North Carolina teams. It's an excellent point. I think most people have come to accept and even congratulate the freedom that players now have. But we'd be fools to not also suggest the obvious, as that texter does. It has an impact on how we're watching this stuff and how much more challenging I think it is to invest. Now, if your favorite team is on the move, you don't care. You're going to root for the brand, right? And you can do that. But in terms of fans who don't have much stake in one team or another, I think it's harder to sort of keep the thread.
A bumper-to-bumper definition.
The big dance for local college basketball fans is what we refer to the best and most historic postseason college basketball tournament. It's where those teams are invited. There's a committee. In fact, our guy Mark Coyle's on the committee. I'm sure he feels himself kind of distant through this process. And they use some analytics. They use some personal opinion. They put it all together in the hopper, and they pick the field. That's the big dance. The big dance is it is possible to play in a postseason tournament, and it is even possible to not have to play, and this might be a surprise to some fans here locally too, in what's called the consolation. There are several consolation tournaments. So those are the ones you go to if you have to, but there's a better one called the Big Dance. That's what it refers to for those who might be confused. In response to McNeese, players jump through the portal every year anyway, so none will be there to see him next year anyway. In fact, back-to-back, McNeese State coach is probably taking the starting 5 with him to NC State. In response to your coaching legend conversation, the Big Ten list of coaches around 1990 is still an amazing group. Bob Knight, Judd Heathcote, Gene Cady, Lou Henson, Clem Haskins, Steve Fisher, Tom Davis, Steve Yoder, Bill Foster. That is a good callback and a very impressive list indeed. Let me scroll down for a couple more opinions on the dance. and we'll be able to get back to this subject several times during the program. Definitely the big dance has lost a little luster from the 90s, zeros, some of the 10s. Also, I'm not into the tourney watching it alone. Miss watching with my former spouse, huge NCAA basketball fan, who made it exciting to stay up all the long nights on the weekends. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. That sounds a little emotional and unfortunate, so I hope you're doing the best with that. I honestly forgot the tournament started this week, writes Adam in White Bear Lake, until I got in the car this afternoon and turned on the plus. Well, I guess there's a statement there. But we said this too. Locally, it's much easier to be detached because we just don't have much familiarity with it. 7-8 years since we've indeed been there. On what basis is Pitino a legendary coach, but Calipari is not? Well, I didn't say Calipari is not. I said I'm less certain I'd put him in that spot. Do we really need to go through Rick Pitino's resume and how many different places he has excelled? He's doing stuff that's never been done in the history of the game. So I really don't think. I would say just Google Rick Pitino and his college coaching and pro coaching career, and you might get some idea about why there might be a bit of a distinction there, even if obviously Calipari has been an outstanding coach. The one and done culture that started 20-ish years ago killed the tourney, and now NIL. Not sure what to make of it present day. Are teams built through recruiting, or are they more just bought? That's Saul and Blaine. A vote for Bill Self, who is participating with not a great Kansas team by his standards, but he's in it, is a legend still coaching. That's probably fair to say. Not the same today. One and done's, transfer portal, NIL, not the same connection. Don't really know the players anymore. They'll wait till next year when same group of players come back and make another run. Still fun, but for me, it's that the players don't stay. If they're top players, they're gone. Tourney hasn't been as interesting in a long time. Plus, having the games being played on like 6 different networks kind of kills it for me without cable in this economy. Ha ha. Well, we have talked about that before. Now, I think in this case, all the games are on, like today, I think they're on CBS, TNT, TBS, and True TV, I believe. So I think now fans have been conditioned of, because that's been the way, I feel like it's been that way for a while, but it can get confusing, and it also might get difficult depending on what, cable package you have, if you're streaming or whatever the case may be. Let's get a pause in for the bottom of the hour break right here. We'll keep looking at some texts. We'll drill a little deeper down on both the Wild's victory and the Minnesota Timberwolves loss and the implications of both. And we got some baseball to discuss today as well. Don't go away.
Catch the Athletics' John Krasinski all season long with Dan Barreiro as he breaks down all the latest local sports news, moves, and more thanks to RBC Wealth Management.
I just sent a message to our guy Gerald Posner, who continues to try to get through the upwards of, I think now, 22,000 pages of intelligence stuff that's been dropped and allegedly kind of connected to the JFK assassination, although it's in some cases connected to other stories. And he might be the most widely quoted reporter / really historian on JFK assassination that there is in the world. And he was I saw a piece in which he's quoted heavily in the New York Post, and in the Post he'd read like 15,000 pages or been through them. Now he's up to, I think, another 6 or 7, and he says my opinion still stands, and it's the same as what he told us, which was, I'm not seeing anything that makes me go, oh my God. On the other hand, there's another JFK assassination guy who is suggesting that there is absolutely some dramatic there are some dramatic revelations, and I'm not sure I understood all of them, but I did text him to ask with a link to that opinion and to find out if he agrees or if he thinks that's being sensationalized or whatever the case may be. So if he responds, I'll let you know and we can update you on that particular story. We mentioned earlier that we do have potentially already one really juicy big dance story involving not just the fact that a 12-seed McNeese State is dominating a 5-seed Clemson at halftime, 31-13, but that the McNeese State coach, Will Wade, has reportedly agreed to accept a job at North Carolina State after this tournament. And that's gotten a lot of attention. He's still coaching, as far as I understand it, today. And the kicker that I didn't mention first time around is he went to Clemson. So his team's destroying his alma mater. And there's ongoing discussion about an intrigue about how difficult this must be for the McNeese State players. But as a couple texters said, they're probably excited because they're saying, well, the better we play individually and collectively, the better chance I have to go with them. We don't have to stay. This is the new world in college basketball. And again, I'm not here to tell you that players don't deserve it, but I am here to say we can still evaluate what impact that has on the way we watch this stuff and the degree to which we do, or I'd say these days don't, invest in it. Because it is true. I mean, you get used to players on certain teams. You invest in that concept. And now they could be gone as soon as they get there. We've seen that happen. I mean, who is the Wisconsin player? Is it Tanjay that Richard Pitino said to us that, yeah, we had him for like a minute. He was coming here for like 18 seconds, and then he went someplace else. And he wasn't necessarily complaining, but he was kind of capturing that's the madness that is college basketball at this particular point. Couple other score updates. Yeah, Auburn's pulling away on Alabama State. It's now 50. Let me do the old refresh to be sure I've got the latest. 58-40. 12 minutes to go. Auburn, a 1 seed over Alabama State now. I think it's 58-42. McNeese Clemson, that's the game we might at some point. Well, we're at the mercy of whatever Westwood won the game they have on at that moment, right, in terms of our listen-ins?
That is correct.
My assumption is if that upset continues to percolate, eventually they're going to stick to that game because it will be a good story angle. Late first half, VCU and BYU, an 11 and BYU's a 6 are tied at 24. Early, Gonzaga 8, Georgia nothing. Very early in that game, and that's 8 versus 9, I believe. And we'll give you some of the final. The rest of them are finals from earlier in the day that we've always kind of already sort of discussed. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is, as I said, wide open 646-86. So for the in terms of the Wild and a much needed, so that's 2 in a row for Mike Yeo, correct?
It is.
So we are. Is it now 9 points clear? I think we're 9 points clear of. Who is it that's behind us?
So right now, we're talking wild card now.
Yeah, right.
So the Wild are in the first wild card spot, 83 points.
Okay.
The 2 teams behind them are the Canucks and the Blues. They are tied with 75 points. So 83 minus 75.
So 8. We're 8 clear of the field in that regard. Correct? Is what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
All right, and so you'll grant it's going to be pretty hard to miss the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not impossible if you go into free fall, but they did recover. At this point, as we said, you almost have to collapse totally and completely if you're going to get out. Now, that's still not if not make it. That's not the same thing as saying you got anywhere to go or that anybody's going to feel real good about your chances to make a run. That part I certainly get. But at least they are breathing and at least they are responding, which cannot, as I mentioned, be said of the Wolves last night. The final score was 119-115. I don't think we scored like in the last 3 minutes of the ball game. And I'd said I wasn't going to go crazy over the loss to the Pacers, but because you're not going to, they'd won 8 in a row. You're not going to go undefeated the rest of the season. But the one, I guess, troubling part of that loss, and even the one last night, is it is an old problem, an ongoing problem rearing its head again that goes beyond just the ups and downs of any single game or The other team having a guy who's not a very good three-point shooter, Obi Toppin, hit 4 3-pointers in the overtime the other night. It's the clutch time numbers for us, the inability to close games for us. We don't hit game-winning shots or game-tying shots at the end of games. And how much of that is just luck? How much of that is execution? Doesn't matter. At some point, it's a problem that whether you're talking about the regular season or certainly if you want to go anywhere in the postseason, absolutely has to be addressed, or you have to get better at it, and we're not. And the main issue continues to be, I think, that Anthony Edwards has, as much as he's gotten better in certain areas offensively and even better about trusting teammates, I still think his decision, the ball is in his hands so much late, and that's not unusual. That's the way a lot of the teams in this league go. But because the ball is in his hands as much as it is, as much as maybe even more than, certainly more than Mike Conley, if Conley even happens to be in the lineup at that point, I don't think we're still seeing the best decision-making. I don't think he's even giving himself a good chance to make shots because they're mainly tough shots. And that's the next step for Finchie, who seemed to have this team on the right page when it comes to unselfishness and keeping the ball moving, whatever the case may be. But in the last 2 minutes, we know this, right? In the last 3, everything tightens. Everything tightens up. Everything's harder. And we have not, as I said, responded particularly well to any of that. So that's going to be, I think, the key question moving forward the rest of this season. Clearly, this team would desperately like to avoid the play-in for all the obvious reasons. And the other is, can you find a way? What's the magic formula to finishing games? What was the stat I saw? Let me see if I can find it because it was a good one. This is not really related to that. It's related to, in this case, it's kind of related to playing down to the competition. It's our guy Charlie Walton from Canis Hoopus. Here's what he passed along earlier today. When the Timberwolves are favored to win, when the odds makers favor the Wolves to win, their record is 32-21. And you say, well, it's not bad, 604. But that is actually second worst among the 14 teams who have been favorites at least 40 times. So when you're favorites, the point is you're actually supposed to win a much higher percentage. The Kings at 27-18, 600 are the only team below them. And obviously, the Wolves were supposed to take care of business against an inferior team that has basically been mailing it in lately in the Pelicans and did nothing of the sort. It was the game where we never really could create much of distance. That kept them interested. They kept coming at us. What was the number I saw? Was it 9? Did we have 9 turnovers in the third quarter? Let me double check that too, because that's another one I think I'd saved. Where is it? So halftime. I'll double check it, but I'm pretty sure we committed 9. Yeah, we turned it over 9 times in one quarter. That's absurd. And by the way, by the end of that period, the Pelicans were up 5. Not an insurmountable lead, but it all contributes to the difficulties that this team continues to be in. As I said, we'll continue to keep an eye on the McNeese State Clemson upset special as we get closer. That game now is, I think, has about 15 minutes to go.
Yeah, they're pulling away.
It's crazy. It's nuts. Yeah.
I looked up what the lowest score of a college basketball game.
Yeah.
And you have to go back to 73, where it's 11-6. But they're at 18 points right now.
18
Clemson.
with 15 minutes to go in the game. Yeah, they've had great difficulty. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line is available to each and every one of you, 646-86. I would say, before I get to a couple more texts, that part of, I think, the ongoing challenge for Finchie is who you play down the stretch. And a lot of that, I think, should be... Now, for example, Rudy didn't play down the stretch last night. Because, I mean, immediately, a couple of national shows say, oh, probably Rudy. They're having trouble scoring. Must be Rudy's fault. It's not everything is Rudy's fault, Draymond Green. My God, it's endless. But that's going to be, I think, and you'd like to think that matchups dictate which direction you go in some cases. But who you're going to play in a roster that now, has some depth to it, I think is going to be very key. But it all still revolves around Edwards. And I mentioned the quote from Mike Conley the other day that I thought was like a plea for help from Uncle Mike Conley, that we just ask too much of Edwards down this. In fact, I asked him that very question the last time we had him on, that I think part of what has to moderate is that the ball, maybe we just run the offense and the ball will get to him eventually. Now, there may be times where other things are called and Edwards doesn't adhere to the play. That's also a possibility. That's the age-old issue. When it comes to quarterback play, we all make assumptions on the basis of, well, that was a bad play call, or why did he go there instead of where he should have gone, where I know he should have gone. That was why did the coach call that play? And what we learn a lot of times is, well, the quarterback didn't run the play that the coach called, or he thought he saw something that gave him permission to try something else, when in fact that was a very poor judgment by the QB. So there may be times they're trying to take some of the pressure off Edwards, and he's just not, following through and making the right read on a given play as well. I don't know. But I really think the formula has to be, whether it's Conley on the court more, or maybe it's not him. Maybe it's Dante. He's not a pure. We don't have any other pure point guards that we're playing right now. So the guy who's probably the closest to another point guard is Julius Randle when he's going good. Maybe the ball's got to go through him a little bit more, where he, in the best of times, penetrates, which creates opening in the offense or in the defense, and allows shooters to get open. How many times has the shot Edwards has taken at the end of games been a relatively clean look? Almost no times. And, that silly shot where he likes to just kind of fade to the left, I hate that shot. It's not been effective for him. He hits it a couple times, and he thinks he can hit it in the clutch, and he has not been able to do that. But as much as we've all extolled the virtues of the improvement of this team and what they've shown through this stretch, as everybody else has gotten healthy, none of it's going to matter if you can't close some of these close games. You're going to end up being very disappointed, and that means that's the number one challenge moving forward for this coaching staff, is who's out there, what you're calling, and how you maybe can take a little bit of pressure off of Edwards. Any update on Kaprizov and Eriksson X return? Our answer, I think, is no, right? There's nothing that's been reported. I said yesterday how much of that is Guerin doesn't want to get into that game of specific declarations on dates, because then jackals like me will say, well, wait a minute. You said it was going to be, what's the date today? It was going to be March 26th. What's going on? But on the other hand, the fact that there's so little information and so little sense of any kind of, okay, here's the playbook on this, and here's where we're headed, that's what I think alarms people. And it makes people think, well, we literally have zero idea. Now, I will say, if you go back to the lengthy absence for Cat, was that 2 years ago? Whatever it was, it was silence on that. It was all crickets. In fact, I complained about that too. I said, we're getting nothing. We're getting no indication of, is he close? Is he semi-close? So maybe this is a strategy the general managers are using right now. I don't know. I have no idea. Clutch time has a lot to do with coaching and finding ways to get players easier shots. We struggle to get easy shots, and I know everyone is a three-point shooter now, but can this team make a bleeping layup? Solid Blaine. Yeah, there's some of that, but again, there were a couple of great plays called out of timeouts where they led to wide-open shots. Now, sometimes the best laid plans are not met with the best execution. And that isn't always on the coach. Maybe the player takes the wrong angle or makes a bad cut or panics too much. It's a combination of those things, but it all has to be, I think, part of the deal. Wild have to be careful. You want that wild card 1 spot, and you don't want to jump the Lanch. Do you agree with that? Is that true?
I mean, yeah, if you can pick and choose, sure.
Yeah.
I think you still have to play the games the way they are, but yeah, I'd much rather go through Vegas, Edmonton, and LA versus Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado. That's for sure.
Here's more Rudy savagery. When Rudy was out, Wolves had found their version of beautiful basketball because we didn't start losing right when he came back. I don't think people were talking about the fact that we now have a non-shooter on the floor and that the other team's best rim protector is now down by the basket. That's Matty St. Paul. I again think that leaves out a lot of stuff, including the impact. And I could remember 5 plays, yesterday or even the Pacers game, where his presence around the rim flat out prevented the other team from advancing to the basket and making anything happen. So I'm not going to say Rudy's above or immune to criticism, okay, at all, right? He is what he is, but I still think it gets a little too simplistic on him. And as I said, I'll look it up, but I'm pretty sure, in fact, Rudy talked about it after the game, and he was asked, like, you okay? You didn't play down the stretch. He said, yeah, you know what? I like to play. I'd rather play, but I'll do whatever. If I play, I'll play hard. If I'm on the bench, I'll cheer everybody on. And I don't think he played down the stretch of that game. And we didn't score. I think our last basket was like 3 minutes to go or in that range. So I still don't know that that's necessarily, I don't think it's as simple as the texture is suggesting. Ant still isn't grown up enough yet to lead this team to a championship. That might be true. And that's not even an indictment. He is still young. It's still a lot to ask. And as I said, I think part of the job of this coach should be to take some of that heat off. And I think that's what Uncle Mike Conley was talking about. I think that might have been after the Pacer game. But I still think that it's true. Now, some of it is his decision-making. He'll occasionally, jack up some shots where you go, that's too early in the shot clock. We have a chance to build on a lead. You're going to play him. So you can't take him out of the lineup. So some of this is going to, I think, be him figuring it out. And some of this is going to be coaches, I think, helping him along, and perish the thought, occasionally taking the ball out of his hands. Because I think we have right now enough other people offensively that are going pretty good to say we can do that. We can live with that, even if they don't represent, the purest scorer that, of course, Edwards indeed represents. What else we have? I'm okay with McNeese coach announcing he's leaving before the season ends because he drove to the athletic director's house at 2 a.m. to tell him right away. Nicely played. It is true. We were talking about Mark Coyle being on the selection committee. It does have to be for him, in an odd sort of way, a sigh of relief that he is pretty certain in knowing that he will never have to leave the room to recuse himself while the rest of the committee ponders the possibility of a Golden Gopher men's basketball team making the postseason field. So there's that.
Optimize your nutrition with Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal service. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from 40 weekly options across 8 dietary preferences like Calorie Smart and Protein Plus. Factor's keto meals can help you lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks. Get started at factormeals.com/factor50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Weight loss with Factor Keto based on a randomized controlled clinical trial. Results will vary depending on diet and exercise.